Just making sure we got everything ready to go. Maybe some different music today. Okay. I don't have any specific plans today. I figured I would just open up PICO-8, maybe take a look at some of my older prototypes and see what I've got. So I have a lot of random things that I've started here. A lot of these really need to be cleaned up. Honestly, I don't even remember what half of them are. Just adjusting my music. Closing down some other apps. This one was called Bullet Hell Test. But it looks like all I was doing was shooting random bullets. That's the whole thing. Let's see what else I got. Thought this was a working cartridge. Hey everybody. I don't have anything specific I'm working on tonight. I was thinking about exploring Godot, but I wasn't quite ready to jump into that. I pulled the repo and built the latest nightly because I wanted to test web builds, but I didn't feel like exploring that right now because I think it'd be a lot of fumbling around in that nightly build. I figured instead I'll just kind of go through some of my other PICO-8 cartridges, maybe start something new, but for the most part I'm just going to hang out and play around in PICO-8 this evening. Right now I'm just kind of going through some of my prototype files here to see what I was working on, see if anything jumps out at me as something to work on. I think this was intended to be a Star Trek inspired Legend of Zelda sort of clone. I think all it is a little character moving around though. So for now we're just kind of jumping around looking at different PICO-8 cartridges. If anyone's got any ideas on something to work on or something to demonstrate, let me know and I'll jump into that. This was something that I started making for Low Res Jam. I don't think I submitted this. Low Res Jam is it's a game jam where you have to make a game in 64 pixels by 64 pixels. So PICO-8 has a memory command. I think it's this one here, 0x5f2c. It has a location in memory. If you poke that location and give it a value of 3, then I think that reduces the resolution to 64 by 64. I forget what the other values are. Yeah, 0 is probably the native 128 by 128. And then you can use other values to make the game wider or narrower. But doing 3 will make it a 64 by 64 game. I don't remember what the intent for this one was, but I was playing around with the idea of abducting little soldiers. Washburn. I have not played. Well, I've played it with PICO-8 just a little bit, but not enough to jump in and feel comfortable. That's something I could play around with as well. I thought this Flappy Bird game was working. Plays the splash screen, and then what? We should update to title. Is title just empty? Oh, there's no actual game here. Maybe I have another version of it. This was a mouse game that I was testing. If you touch any of the tiles, you lose your path. My mouse is acting up. For some reason, when I run OBS, my mouse cannot function. It's lagging behind all my movements. But the intent here was that you had to touch all of the different positions without touching one of the other tiles. And so it's kind of like those little ring games that you'd see at a carnival where you have to move something through a series of points. And then I was going to have several different levels, but this is just the one test. Yeah, that's not going to work right now. Oh. Oh, this is going to be a Vampire Survivors style game. I think it's supposed to be firing. Maybe not. Oh, shot at that guy. And then this was, I think, where I left off on this, making the upgrades. A bullet heaven. I don't think I've made a bullet heaven, but remind me what the difference between a bullet heaven and a bullet hell is. Oh, would Vampire Survivors be a bullet heaven? Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is where I left off with this one. It was just some little zombies. I had those two little blue radiuses are or circles are the radius that you can aim and the radius that you can attack, I think. And then I took that prototype and I actually worked on something else. I was trying to make a Mario Vampire Survivors style game. This one you actually have to press a button to fire. I kind of want to go back to this prototype. Have a lot of different enemies. Do like the cactus stacks, I forget what they're called. The bombs. Have turtles that you could like pop them out of a shell and then run into the shell to hit them into a row of enemies. Stars that let you just run through everything for a little bit. And then maybe a final boss after a few minutes of play. Bowser shows up and you have to do a little boss fight. A lot of times that I've had an idea, made a cart, and then didn't put anything in it. This is testing an animation framework with a whole bunch of sprites on screen. 500 sprites running, and it was concurrently animating them when I'm pressing the run animations. This was a little art test for crosshatch generation, but I think there's actually another cart here that had the dungeon generation in it. I started working with PICO-8 when my daughters were really into Frozen. They're teenagers now, so not so much, but I started working on a little Frozen themed platformer. Doesn't work very well. This was a long time ago. This was a wiring test. I wanted to see if I could use map tiles to have electrical components connected. So it sort of flood fills until it gets to a blocker. I think these are switches actually. Yeah, so I can turn the switches on and off. This one was intended to be a base for electrical puzzles in other games. Yeah, a little bit like Pipe Dream. I guess it could be repurposed for that. You could have your water slowly flowing through all the different tiles. This was using coroutines to make sort of a freeze frame on Flash. So if something could trigger a hit or an action and the coroutine would pause for a moment. Oh, okay, this was a test to be able to draw a polygon and then have a collision constrain an entity inside of a polygon. So I have a tool that I can click around and make different shapes, reposition this, and then I should collide within the bounds of the polygon. In this case, these inverted lines here throwing it off. I think this was actually part of the dungeon generation that I was looking for. This was a squash and stretch test of a static sprite and trying to animate it through squashing and stretching when it's jumping. I think there was something with these these spots on the side. I think there was supposed to be some sort of collision detection or another like electrical test. But I like this squash and stretch. I want to do more with simple sprites. Oh, I think Tiny Dungeon's the one I was looking for. Yeah, so this was using that cross-hatching that I tested earlier as sort of a fog of war. So as the character moves around, it would reveal more of the dungeon. I think this, yeah, this is all randomly generated. So I'm randomly walking, creating circles that generate a little dungeon, and it's all connected. No gameplay here, but it was just something I wanted to figure out how to do. So I could add some characters to this. And then I have some tooling in here that lets me draw into this map and expand it. I think this was intended to be, I was working on text tooling. So drawing out text, and then I think where I left off on this one was I wanted to add some simple markdown formatting. So knowing how to make things emphasized in different colors or cause them to shake. I could probably play with this Mario prototype for now. Let's see, how did I organize these? Got types. My object-oriented programming for this one's a little bit different than I'm doing it lately. I do have enemy, but this is like a static Goomba, I'm guessing. My mouse is struggling today. See, I don't think these guys drop coins. I'll start there. I cannot move the mouse. What is going on? This coin is at X24, Y8, and it's 3 by 4. Try and navigate with keyboard shortcuts. Let's go to, I think I have fireball. This should really be projectiles. Actually, I won't rename that for now. So I'll have a projectile. I wanted to work on a coin. I was thinking I would call the coin a projectile just so that I could have it fly out of an enemy. So maybe for now I'll just drop them. is enemy. We'll extend entity and have coins. Coin is going to need a draw function. Inside the draw function, we're going to use SSPR. Oh yeah, I see you guys talking about Sea of Stars. I started that. I got to the pirate crew at the docks, and I've been meaning to go back to that game. See, entity, do I have a destroy? I do have a destroy. Game object destroy, and then delete entities. So enemy destroy equals function. We want to do entity.destroy, pass in current environment. Then we want to create some new coins. Start there and see if that works. Yeah, so we create one coin. And it'd probably be cool if the coins like flew out of the enemies. Where did I put coin? Top of the enemy file. So by default, sprites or entities in this game are going to move and update. So I think the way that I set this up is I can give it a direction X and Y and it'll move. But I don't think it's gonna quote unquote land on the ground. So I'm giving this a random X and Y. But it's just going to keep going up forever. There's no gravity. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I even have coroutines set up in here. Let's check. I don't. I think I'm going to step out of this actually for a minute. I'll save that file. Maybe we'll just talk about coroutines. So in a fresh PICO-8 cartridge, I'll usually add the 3 main lifecycle methods here: init, update, and draw. And then coroutines in PICO-8 let you set up another function to run to be interruptible. So let's see if I do, I'll just make it a count variable. I'll define it the same as the other ones. Count var takes a variable, and then it will increase the count. So I plus equals 1. And then this will be while true, do. And then to create a coroutine, you use co-create, and you pass it the function. Actually, in this case, so I could pass this. You can name this whatever you want. So cofunc equals co-create. And then when you want it to run, you call co-resume. We will clear the screen. And then we'll print, let's come up with a variable. Var A equals 1, var B equals 2. And then we'll print var A at 8 pixels and 8 pixels with color of white. Print var B at 8 pixels, 16, the color of gray. So we get 1 and 2. Actually, I want these both to be 1 to start. And then, so our co-resume is going to call this function every frame, but it's not taking any arguments right now. I think the second argument would be the second argument to co-resume is the arguments that you want to pass to your function. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah, so these parameters should be passed in. But it's not incrementing. Usually these arguments are passed by reference. I wonder if they're passing the value instead. We'll call this var C equals 0. Var C plus equals I. Still not working. Sometimes coroutines can fail silently, and so the best way to check that is to wrap your co-resumes in an assert. We're not failing. Resuming cofunc. Cofunc should run yeah, we should run at least once, get into the while true, then run var C. Yeah, Tanner, I've seen PICO-8 Doom clone. Let's see. I don't know if you can load it through here. search. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, this is impressive. I can't remember how many carts it is, but it uses several cartridges to create this game. It's just ridiculous what some people do with PICO-8. Washburnella, you asked what assert does. So I actually have the documentation open on the other screen here. Let me just read exactly what it says. If the condition is false, it'll stop the program and print the message given. In the case of the coroutine assertion, it actually doesn't say anything. But I think maybe we can test it out. This variable passing isn't working how I'm thinking, so I'm just going to take it out for now. I usually don't pass variables to co-resumes. But so let's just say, I don't know if I can, I don't think PICO-8 has arrays. Can I divide by 0? Cannot resume dead coroutine. So I have my assert there. Yeah, so right now it is kind of like a stop. So right now my coroutine dies. It'll run once. Just do stuff. So the coroutine will get resumed and run once. And let's take off this clear screen and print test. Oh, didn't change the name here. Yeah, so it's running once. If I clear the screen here, let's actually go up here, say when it starts, clear the screen. So when I run this, it calls test once, but every loop it's going to try and call cofunc. If you don't really care about the coroutine dying, that's fine. If you don't want to be calling something once it's expired, you could put an assert here and it'll let you know that you tried to call a dead coroutine. A better example would be, let's see. So instead of test, I want this to do something that would break. Because I think if I do like 1 divided by, or actually maybe it was doing it before. No, it's unexpected symbol. A equals 1 divided by table. So that should be a syntax error. You shouldn't be able to divide a number by a table, but we're not seeing anything. So often what could happen if you're using coroutines and you're expecting your coroutine to handle animating something or moving a character, doing some task in the background, it'll just fail silently. So you can wrap that in an assert call when you call co-resume. Let me move these down. So it's assert, co-resume, and then the function that you're trying to resume. And so if you wrap the co-resume in an assert, then it'll actually bubble up those errors. Attempt to perform arithmetic on a table value. So in this case, this invalid code was silently failing in a coroutine. And the only way to get it to not silently fail is to wrap it in an assert. But assert does have multiple uses. And I don't really have a great way to demonstrate this, but yeah, if you assert anything that's false, it'll stop the program. I think that's what it is. Yeah, so in this case, just assert failed. But so I'll often use coroutines for animations. So let's go back to do stuff. Say, let's come up with something here. make a person table. Give it a position. Let's clear our screen on draw and get rid of this clear screen. Let's do some other color maybe. Let's go with 12. Missing a closing paren. And now here I am calling a dead coroutine. So typically my whole setup is if co status co func. Actually, I have a bit more than this in the tooling that I use, but for this, I think we just check if the status is dead. So if the status of the coroutine is not dead, then assert the co-resume. Yeah. So now it'll only call the coroutine if it's not dead. And a coroutine dies when the function finishes executing. So unless this was another while true do, now this will loop indefinitely. And then the yield tells it to exit out of this execution and continue back to the main thread. So far we're not doing a whole lot of anything. We need to draw our person. Forget which character is person. It's not P. It's not that one. There he is. J. So I want to print that at person.x, person.y. There's my little person. Make it stand out a little bit more. Okay, so now we have a little person. We have a coroutine that's running. So every frame it's going to update that coroutine and check here. And so we can say maybe in the coroutine, what would be a good thing to do in the background? Person.x plus equals sign of the current time. X be cosine. Sign of the current time. Multiply each of these times some large value because sine will go between -1 and 1. Let's change it to just equal. Set them equal to 64 plus. There we go. So now our coroutine, this is running in the background. I could just say, maybe I only want to do this a certain number of times. For I equals 160, so this should be for 60 frames, do. Oops. So for 60 frames, thanks for stopping by. For 60 frames, I'm going to loop, it should be 2 seconds, and then stop. So that coroutine is running for 60 frames. Each frame it's going to move the person a little bit and then yield. And then maybe I only yield when I is even. So it's doing it every other frame. That's still pretty quick though. Maybe I do mod 4. Oh, actually I didn't add this. Thanks for stopping in, Wash Brunello. And then you can conditionally call the coroutines also. So maybe I would probably have this in some other function. So I have a function do coroutine, and I can say if I'm currently holding down the X button, then do the coroutine. So it's not moving, but if I hold X, it'll update its position. We still have this. Kind of at a loss for what to work on right now. I've been jumping into different things. I was looking around at a few different things before the stream also. I really do think I want to get started in Godot, but I'm not sure what to work on yet. How hard would it be to try and make the doom scrolling? Not sure what you mean, Tanner. Oh, like you're moving step by step instead of fluid movement? I don't know. I haven't looked at the code for it, but I know, I actually don't know if you have access to all of this code. Let's see. We should have some of it, but I know it's a pretty complicated project. Yeah, this is all compressed also. If the original source is out there somewhere, it might not be too hard to make it a step like you're thinking, sort of like a text-based adventure. But I don't know if I'd be able to do it from the version that I'm loading up from Splore. See what other people have been making. There's mine. I'm trying to remember how it was called, or the way that it looks like it's rendering walls like it looks 3D even though it's a 2D plane. Now that you're saying that, it's on the tip of my tongue also. Maybe some sort of projection. You have to let me know if you figure it out. This Oblivion Eve game is pretty impressive, the animation that they got in here. So this is multi-cart. It's loading another cartridge right now for the tutorial. The way the levels reform is really interesting. Heavy attacks go further and hit harder. Press A direction and X at the same time. There's combos. Meter at the top right increases as you perform combos. When maxed out, you enter a stronger form. This form increases your stats and grants you more air dodges. Oh, raycasting? That's the term for that? That's not what I was thinking. The longer a combo goes, the more meter you gain. Power up, you can choose to increase your stats. I'd seen some in-progress screenshots of this game, but I didn't realize how in-depth it actually was. Okay, so we loaded another cart going back here. There's different weapons. It's really interesting how the weapons are circling the character. This probably uses the same concept, Tanner, as what you would use if you're drawing 3D shapes. I'll have to play this more later. I'm curious if they're using the map at all. Kind of. So some of the map data is in use. Or no, that's sprite data. I'm in the map now. So the map is being used to draw these, unless this is just a representation of some of the sprite data that's in there. There is a lot of animation frames here. This is something I always tend to avoid this early on in a game. The amount of sprites here that are used up by the animations. I try to avoid doing this and I over optimize, and then as a result I end up with less fluid animations. But it looks so good. All the animations in this game. I'm surprised how much sprite space they dedicated to it. This is another one that's really impressive. It's got like this is Praxis Fighter. It's got sort of an animated intro. You have bombs and gun. I don't think the gun varies at all. Can't tell, like tapping versus holding. Let's see if we can look at anything here. Oh my gosh, sprite data is compressed. So there's our sprite sheet. I think all of the sprite and map data is compressed to fit a lot more artwork in this game. There are tools that can compress all of your PICO-8 data. All of the code is compressed into this as well, unless there's multiple cartridges, but everything's just inlined. Yeah, it's pretty much maxed out on the compressed file size. I can't really point at it. The compressed file size and tokens are almost entirely maxed out. So it's a lot shoved into one cartridge, and they've used some external tools to help compress it. There's a game I actually want to pull up. I don't know if it's just Ascent. Yeah, so this is another one that Johan Peitz, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, did for a low-res jam. My screen is way too big for me to read this. I have to like step back from my monitor. It's a cool little game. I recommend playing it. It's a little Metroidvania in 64 by 64 pixels. But what I loved about it is everything in the game is pretty easy to take a look at here. So I would recommend playing through the game. And then if you have PICO-8, open up the cartridge and just take a look at how it's built. You can take a look at the sprite sheets. Everything's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of tricks. I think there's one or two things that are a little more advanced. I can't remember what they are, but I know I looked at this before. There's one or two things that are a little more advanced. Maybe it's just the color palette is shifted a little bit for this game, but all the sprites are pretty visible. It's a little bit of a spoiler, so I wouldn't look too closely at it, but the map is all completely visible. You can just kind of scroll around and take a look at the whole game map. But I think this is a really good use of kind of PICO-8 without a lot of special tricks and tools. Oh, this one, it would have to have a memory poke. Yeah, so it's got a memory poke here for going into 64 by 64, and then another one for adjusting the color palette, and then a custom font. So some of these things here are a little more advanced, messing with the PICO-8 memory. But other than that, this game's pretty straightforward, and you could read through a lot of the code and make something similar. Or you could even potentially take the code as is and adjust the map. But I think it's a great game to learn with. a lot of times when you see those really, I don't know what to call it, intricate or advanced things like POOM, they have to compress a lot of the data, a lot of the artwork, use multiple carts, and it gets a little bit harder to just open up and follow. So for someone learning to program, those might not be the best things to jump into. I don't know what some of these are. This one has a versus mode. Oh, it's a fighting game. Who am I? I can't tell what I'm doing. I need to look at some instructions for that. I think this is a pretty good platformer. I think I tried this out once. Yeah, that was like Dragon Ball. Let's see. Yeah, this is another one that's pretty heavily compressed. Sprite sheet's more visible. The bottom half of the sprite sheet looks like a bunch of noise here because in PICO-8, the bottom half of the sprite sheet and the bottom map of the map share space and memory. So you can either use your entire sprite sheet or your entire map, but not both. So this game only uses half of its sprite sheet so that it can draw out a lot of additional levels in the map. But aside from the code, I mean, this would be a good one to take a look at just to see the tile layout. Take a look at their level design. This is kind of like Off-Road, the old arcade game that you'd play with the steering wheel pedals. Let's see what we have here. Yeah, it's compressed again. I'm bad about this too. I use a lot of more advanced functionality in PICO-8, and so the games that I end up publishing are probably going to suffer from some of the same things. I think in the case of my latest one, the code might all be visible, but it's still using some environment tweaking. Yeah, so if you were to open this Moonbreak game, there's some comments in here that they're going to look weird because I edited all of this in an external editor, and so it used uppercase and lowercase. PICO-8 by default only really shows lowercase. You could use the puny font mode where you hit Control P and you have lowercase and uppercase, but they're inverted. So in this particular file, you would see a lot of underscore and then tiny letters ENV. That actually represents all uppercase ENV in an external editor. But so in my case, all the code's readable. It's still inlined into a single tab, which isn't great for learning. The sprites are all visible here. The map is completely visible and editable. And I think in general, I want to try and start doing more work directly in PICO-8 so that all the cartridges I create can be opened up and learned from. Tanner says there's a cart called cast. Let's see if it's actually, there's not a published cart called cast. If it's something you found on the Lexilawful BBS, let me know. And we can load it right here. Check Explorer. That's my search. I don't see a published cart for cast. Curse of the Lich King's a good game though. Oh, I see. You sent me a link to something. So that they probably created a cart, but they don't have it published. So this is another game by Johan, I think. Yeah. This is the same person that made Ascent. This one is compressed. Looks like the map and everything's still available though. Let's see. I think I remember seeing a first-person shooter template. PICO-8 is also pretty impressive. If you've ever played Super Hot, enemies only move when you move. So this was actually made by some of the developers of Super Hot. It's got a whole narrative. Must keep pressing the wrong button here. Yeah, they made the same game. Maybe I'm misremembering and I'm thinking, oh no, here it is. Mott's Wolf 3D engine. This is the one I was trying to think of. So it's a whole engine to start making these sorts of games. Oh, interesting. So in this, if you hit X, it switches the view. And so right now what we're seeing is the view that you would typically expect out of a PICO-8 game. And then when I switch here, it's projecting those sprites in 3D space. So it's the exact same sprites. I'm looking at the door, it's facing the door, but it's rendering the door in perspective from the quote unquote camera. Let's see if the code's available here. Yeah, so this would be a better one to probably use as an example. So rendering, we're splitting different arrays of numbers into tables. Why is that? Oh, these are color ramps, I think. I'm guessing pals is short for palettes. So these are different palettes, but I'm not sure why they need all these different palettes. Set fog. What does that change? Not sure. Draw a map. Okay. So clip restricts the area that you're drawing, I believe. It is just drawing the native map relative to the camera. Oh, okay. This is probably drawing depending on the view you're in. That's not the regular draw call. Yeah, so is map mode, we draw map, otherwise we draw 3D view. So in 3D view, then we set the camera to an X position of 0 and 128 minus S height divided by 2. Calculate the wall columns. Yeah, so then there's your raycast. Draw ceilings, draw floors. So raycast walls. Raycast walls is going to get a minimum and maximum that is the current camera, X and Y, I assume. We're getting the angle of the camera. Does it let us use the mouse? No. We must be rotating a camera when we do this. And then we raycast. So for 0 to 127, we're raycasting in each direction. Yeah, it would probably take me longer to pick this apart. So moving through a series of boundaries and essentially determining maybe how far away each pixel is. I think there's a function called t-line. Yeah, so then t-line is used to draw a texture line at a position in camera, which I've never really used t-line, but I know that that's what, as soon as that function came out, that was used for a lot of these 3D rendering examples, but I've never taken the time to dig into it. But so we're essentially playing this, but rendering it like this. So our collision detection running into walls is this arrow running into walls. What was this floor? So there's a circle being drawn on the floor. So in some sprites must be flagged. Let's see. No. Maybe we have it listed somewhere. We're not using sprite flags. These blue dots here are sprite flags. Yeah, that CPU counter is pulling the same numbers. But you could build off of this if you were trying to make a first-person shooter. It's okay if the CPU is going up to 80, just don't want it over 100. Imagine this is only updating at 30 frames per second. Let's see. PICO-8 can either be 30 frames or 60 frames. Oh no, it is 60. At least the main update is running at 60. So if we change this to just update, now it's 30 frames a second and the CPU is a lot lower. And the character is just slower because it's probably only applying the speed. It's not frame rate dependent, it's just each frame. Yeah, the slow movement is just the character speed. I think we could adjust that. I'm not sure where it is though. Yeah, because now it's updating 30 times a second instead of 60 times a second. Gameplay. This button X. Here we go. Yeah, we're just changing it by 1. I'll leave the turning slower. We'll double the forward and backward. Yeah. High speed through here. You could make a boating game. Really slow turn, give it some acceleration, and now you've got a little canal boating game, like a Venice boat boatmen, whatever they're called. The faster you're moving, though, I think the worse it looks at 30 frames per second. So I think even though it was slow, you could make a more survival horror feel, forcing a player to move more slowly in a level like this at 30 frames per second. Tanner, you have a lot of ideas. Start making them in PICO-8. Bullfrog's a really cool one. This was made into a Playdate game also. Actually don't know how to play it that well. I guess you can only move it one by one. It's basically Tetris, but you're in the grid. I feel like the tongue should go longer. So it determines the position when you press the button. So if you're falling down, it looks like it's a longer tongue. This is one of my kids' favorite. So I have a PICO-8 arcade cabinet here at the house. And every once in a while they'll just turn on the arcade cabinet and this is the only thing they play. It's a great high score challenge. I'll jump off. So it's got a nice score input. It's great for an arcade cabinet and everyone can kind of gather around and take turns. Trying to see if something else jumps out at me here. I think for next week, I'm probably going to try and get Godot going and have a plan for what to work on there. I don't know if I want to work on, usually a platformer is the first thing I go for. It's just something that's comfortable and familiar. But I don't know, I'll have to think if I want to use something else. My jam entry, I could always make a bigger version of this, but I kind of wanted to take a break from working on this game. I'd like to make a version of this that's procedurally generated, so you could replay it, and every time you jump in, you've got a different little moon base and layout. I think I'm probably going to call it there, end a little bit early today. Not feeling super inspired right now by any of the projects that I have going on. So I want to take some more time and be ready for next week. But I definitely want to settle into either Picotron or Godot. And Picotron I think still has some rough edges, so I'm torn on whether or not I really want to invest in that just yet. But it'd be nice to get familiar with it. Godot is somewhere I definitely want to spend more time, but I want to make sure I know what I'm working on there and not just opening it up and tinkering. Because I don't think I'll get very far just tinkering. I can do that in PICO-8, now that I've got some experience and I can just start spitballing and come up with something. But Godot, I think I need to have an objective. So if anyone has any ideas, let me know on maybe in the comments or on Twitter or Mastodon. Hanging out on everything lately. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you all next week.